Booneshine Brewing Company, and today we're going to break down some chickens a couple different ways. So I love to get my chickens from the food hub. I often get them in a CSA from Against the Grain. You can also get them from Healing Springs or Trossley. There's lots of beautiful local chickens available. Unfortunately, with small farms, as we all know, sometimes things just aren't available. They can only grow so much. So you might find yourself in a position where you have to go to the grocery store to get a chicken. So if you're going to the grocery store to get a chicken, right, you don't necessarily want to buy that $5 rotisserie chicken. That creates all sorts of problems with our food system. Basically, if a grocery store is selling a chicken for $5, they're selling that at a loss and hoping you're going to buy a lot of other stuff at the store when that price for a chicken is completely unsustainable on a small scale. And we would like to buy food on a small scale and from local sources as much as possible. So just because sometimes the food hub might be out of chicken doesn't mean you can't still source one responsibly, right? So we got a couple different chickens here today. Our first one is a poulet rouge chicken from Joyce Farms. Joyce Farms is located in Winston-Salem and has been producing chickens for a very long time. They're really big on regenerative farming practices, and this is actually a heritage breed chicken, which is common to see one that's not really a gigantic bird. You'll see when we open this thing up, there's a lot more leg than there is breast, and that's because it's a heritage breed. Another chicken we have today, this is from Farmer Focus. Farmer Focus is a poultry chicken farm co-op. So this is a group of farmers, small family farmers that all work together to sell chickens in a grocery store. What's kind of cool about this one, they have this sticker on the side where if you go to their website and put the farm ID in here, it'll tell you exactly where this chicken came from. In this case, it came from a small family farm in West Virginia. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about sourcing chickens, let's talk about the equipment we're using today. First and foremost, I have a cutting board. My board is nice and clean and dry. At home, you may have one specific board you'd like to use for raw poultry. In a professional restaurant setting, that's absolutely imperative. So we have lots of different cutting boards. We only have yellow boards for raw chicken. So this is the only board we'll use for raw chicken in the restaurant. Next, I've got a fillet knife. This is a semi-flexible knife, not super flexible, and you'll see it's not really big. You really don't need a very big knife to do most poultry fabrication. You'll also see I'm only going to use about this much of it most of the time. I've also got a steel here, a honing steel. This isn't going to sharpen my knife, but it's going to help me keep it nice and sharp, especially because there'll be times when I need to cut through bone. Nice sharp knife. Next thing I have here, disposable paper towels. I really like to use disposable paper towels because we want to make sure our birds get nice and dry, but I don't want to use a kitchen towel that might end up cross-contaminating with something else. Let's go ahead and open up our first chicken. So to open up the bag, if it's sitting this way, I've got the breasts on top. If I flip it over, I've got the backbone on top. So when I'm cutting this bag open, I'm going to do that so that I don't accidentally cut through the breast. Just going to make a very small cut. And now, this little pack. There's going to be some liquid in the bag. So I'm going to go ahead and put one paper towel down. And I'm just going to gently try and pull this bird out of the bag and leave most of that liquid in there so I can throw it away easily. Now there's lots of debate on whether or not you should rinse a chicken or not, right? And the concern there is cross-contamination with salmonella. I'll put it this way, there's nothing wrong with rinsing your chicken in the sink. The only time it becomes a problem is if you're splashing water all over the place, right? So if there's a lot of purge in the bag, or if your chicken has any sort of off smell when you open it up out of the cryovac package, that's actually pretty common. If that is the case, I would recommend to go ahead and rinse it gently in cold water. Don't turn that water on really high so you don't splash it all over the place. Now, if the chicken does not have a whole lot of purge, doesn't have any sort of off smell, you don't really need to rinse it. What I do want to make sure I do is get it really dry. So I'm going to pat this thing as dry as I can to make sure it's not going to slide around on my cutting board. Any good chicken is also going to have the good stuff in it, right? So this comes with the giblets. Basically that means what I have in this little pack is a neck, chicken neck, a liver, a heart, and a gizzard. That's all great stuff for stock and gravy. I'm going to save it. So the first way we're gonna break down a chicken is to do a basic 8-piece. I'll do a couple little variations here, but this is just, I got a whole chicken and I wanna break this down into 2 wings, 2 breasts, 2 thighs, 2 legs, right? And then I'll also have the carcass left over. So right now, again, I've got the breasts facing up. If this chicken was still walking around, it would be walking around like this, right? I've got the wings out. And the only thing we're missing here is our feet, also called paws, chicken paws. So I'm laying this chicken down on its back so its breasts are facing up. I've got a little bit of excess neck skin here. I'm a big fan of ribnets, which is basically rendered chicken skin, and schmaltz is the fat that comes out of that. Delicious stuff. So I'm saving that. I'm basically not going to throw anything away on this bird. I'm going to use the whole thing. I got that little bit of neck skin removed, and now what I'm going to do is reach my finger in here. This is right where the neck would be connected, and I can feel the wishbone in there. Why it's worth the trouble to remove that wishbone is because it's going to allow me to get all of that breast meat off nice and cleanly. So to remove that wishbone, I'm going to use just the tip of my knife. I can feel where that bone is, and I'm going to cut on either side of that bone. Do the same thing on this side. And now, using a finger and a thumb, I'm going to slide my fingers all the way up to the point, pop where it's connected to the keel bone. And if I do it nice and carefully, that'll all come out in one nice clean piece. Dry that out, bake it in the oven for a little while, give that to your niece and nephew to break and make a wish. I've done that a million times. I still don't know which piece wins, the big piece or the little piece. I don't know. Now our wishbone is removed there, okay? Next thing I'm going to do is remove my wings. To do that, I'm going to create a little bit of tension. Imagine if that's this joint right here, right? So I'm going to pick this bird up by the wing so that it bends its arm back like this. That's creating tension. It's going to allow me to make a nice clean cut through it. So I'm holding it up like this. I can see where the breast connects to the wing, so I don't want to get too much of that breast meat. Now I'm just going to cut around it like this. That pops that joint open. Wing off. On this side, I'm going to do it just a little bit differently. You may have heard of an airline breast. So this time, instead of taking all 3 of those wing joints off, I'm only going to take the tip and the flat. I'm going to leave the drum on this breast. Again, I'm holding it up by the wing, and I'm just cutting all the way around the bone on the drumette. Now I should be able to pop that joint right off, nice and clean. You can remove the tips if you want, or you can leave your wings whole. When I'm eating wings, like putting them on a smoker or a fryer, I really like to leave the wing whole. Tuck that little thing back there, just like that. So now I'm going to remove the breasts, and I've got this joint still attached to this breast. That's going to be my airline breast. And then this is going to be my classic boneless, skinless breast. So where the legs connect to the breast, I'm going to cut through that skin very gently so I don't cut into the leg. I'm going to do that on both sides. Now you can really see where that leg is connected to the carcass. Once I've got that done, now I'm going to cut straight down the middle of the keel bone. Keel bone is a piece of cartilage that sits right in between the 2 breasts. Now just very carefully, I'm going to follow along the rib cage one breast off. This skin pulls off really nice and easily. That's going with my other skin for schmaltz and gribnitz. If you really like chicken tenders, this is where they come from, right there. That just pulls off really easily. That sits right on the inside of the breast, right against the keel bone. So you can imagine, kind of like if you're thinking of like a beef tenderloin, this muscle does almost no work, which is why it's so tender. Next, we're gonna take off our airline. So I'm gonna turn my bird around. I'm gonna pull that meat back away from the keel bone just a little bit. Basically do the exact same thing on this side. Follow along the rib cage. Now what I have to be careful here, I want to make sure I leave this joint attached for an airline. So I'm going to make sure that when I cut it, I don't accidentally cut that joint off. I'm just going to clean a little bit of this skin up. Now I've got my bone-in, skin-on airline breast. If I'm grilling chicken or baking a chicken breast, this is my favorite way to do it. So notice I took my breasts off before my legs, and the whole reason is because those legs are creating a lot of stability for my bird, right? So now I'm ready to take those legs off. I'm gonna flip the bird over, and I'm going to, right where these joints are connected, I'm gonna pop those joints out like this. Nice and gently, but you can feel it. It's kind of like when you crack a knuckle. It makes the same sort of sound and feeling. All right, now that I've got my leg joints popped, I can see there's these two little balls right here. These muscles are called the oyster muscles. That's the best, most tender part of the entire bird. So I'm gonna make sure I don't cut through those. I'm gonna leave those attached. You can see here, this is going straight down the spine. This is going across where the skin is attached. There's kind of like this natural line right here that goes right above those oyster muscles. That's gonna be my next cut. Just like that. Now, using just again the very tip of my knife, I'm just going to barely cut in to where that oyster muscle is and then slide my thumb underneath it to make sure I'm getting all of that off that little spoon-shaped bone. Do the same thing on this side. Now I'm going to cut straight down the back, and from here all I have to do to remove the leg is cut through this little tendon right here. And once I've cut through that tendon, the whole thing will pull right off. Do the same thing on this side. All of this extra skin is going with my other skin. So now what I've got is a nice clean chicken carcass that's ready to be used for stocks, soups, anything like that. One more thing, chicken butt, also known as the Pope's nose. It's fine to put that in stock, but this is a secret little nugget. Put that with the skin you're rendering. Now with my two legs here, I can leave them whole if I want to. This is another piece I love to grill, just like that with the skin on. Or if you want to separate your thigh from your drum, I'm going to flip it back over this way. And if I look at it from this side, I can see this little line of fat that goes right here. That line of fat is basically going to be right where the thigh bone connects to the leg bone. So I'm going to make one cut right there, cut straight through that joint. Now I've got a drum and a thigh. Let's say you want to make boneless, skinless thighs. With this one, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my fingers to kind of pull the meat gently apart from that bone. Now I'm just going to run my knife down one side and then the other, like that. I'm going to slide my knife underneath this bone and do the same thing on this side. There's a little kneecap in here, right? So I need to make sure I cut that out. This bone's going with my carcass for stock. And now I've got a boneless, skinless thigh. So now we've done our 8-piece chicken. Now we're going to spatchcock a chicken. So we're using our Joyce Farms Poulet Rouge heritage breed chicken for that. When we started our last chicken, we talked a little bit about kind of a funky smell that happens sometimes. Again, I want to reiterate that it's really common. If your chicken smells a little foul, horrible pun, but intended, it's likely not because the chicken is bad, it's because it's been a cryovac package. It's an anaerobic environment, and sometimes that can create some kind of weird smells that does not mean that the bird is bad at all. It just means you want to give it a quick rinse. So I'm feeling right in between the two breasts to feel that wishbone. You can feel it on either side. And I'm going to use just the tip of my knife to cut down both sides of that wishbone. Just like that, just tiny little cuts. Now I can use my fingers to slide them up, pinching right to where that keel bone's attached. Bend it backwards, pop the whole thing out. I love it when it comes out nice and clean like that. Next, we're going to flip our chicken over so that its back is facing up. Most of this time I've been using a quote-unquote surgical grip, right? So I'm holding my knife like this. In this case, I'm going to use a pistol grip, or what I like to call psycho killer grip. So to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just use about this much of my knife, and you can feel on the inside, on either side of the backbone is where the ribs are attached. So I'm going to start on one side, and this is kind of like pulling an e-brake on a car. I'm not pushing my knife all the way in to where I mess up my thigh meat. I'm just going from here to about there. So I'm sticking that knife in, and then I'm pulling my e-brake up. That's cutting right through the rib cage that's attached to the backbone. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, I've got my two oyster muscles here, which I want to make sure stay on there. So I'm going to cut around those. And then I'm going to slide my thumb in underneath those oysters to scoop them off that little spoon-shaped bone that they're on. Now from here, I'm going back to this grip, and I have to cut around those spoon-shaped bones to get to my leg joint where they're attached. Now here I can see it's kind of going about it the opposite way of how we did it last time, but now you can see right there, that's that joint where the leg is attached to the back. And once I pop through that little joint, that piece will pull right off. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just getting down to where I can see where the leg is attached. Pop right through that joint. Now I've got my chicken back all in one piece. Next thing I'm going to do is remove the keel bone. So if we remember from the other bird, the keel bone is this piece of cartilage right here that's keeping those two breasts attached. We're going to remove that by gently pushing through that cartilage just to there until it stops. I'm going to make one little score mark all the way down the keel bone on this side. Now I'm going to pop it. I'm going to slide my fingers underneath that keel bone on both sides, and then the whole thing will pull out in one piece. And that's it. That's my spatchcock chicken. I'm going to pull those wingtip joints back behind it. That way the bird lays down flat. Spatchcock is a pretty funny word. Another common name for this is a brick chicken. And the reason is, now that we've got this whole thing in one nice flat layer, we can lay it down, skin side down, either on a grill or in a cast iron pan. And traditionally, you would actually take a brick, or another heavy cast iron pan is a good way to do it, and set it down right on top of the chicken. So when it's cooking on the grill or in the pan, you've got full coverage touching, so you're getting all of your skin really nice and crispy, and you're cooking your chicken evenly. So that's two different ways to break down chickens. There's more, but I hope that definitely helps. Go to the grocery store and buy a whole chicken. Utilize the whole thing. There's lots of different things that all of those parts are good for, rather than just always buying the boneless, skinless breasts. Big thank you to Blue Ridge Women in Agriculture for inviting me to be part of this video series. It was my pleasure. Dirt Girls out.